This week on Sneak Preview, Susan Sarandon and Sam Shepard play the parents of 7 boys in Safe Passage. The late Jessica Tandy and Paul Newman and Bruce Willis in Nobody's Fool. And The Madness of King George, a lavish historical epic that tells a shocking true story. Plus Albert Finney in A Man of No Importance. And Sigourney Weaver in Death and the Maiden. All on this week's star-studded Sneak Previews.
Patrick, for 25 years now, you have been dunking your tea bag exactly 7 times and then throwing it in the sink. Who do you think takes your tea bag from the sink and puts it into the garbage?
Where is the garbage?
And we'll tell you where the garbage is, if anywhere, as we look over 5 big year-end releases. Movies that are all being touted for Oscar nominations for their stars. And we'll give you our take on each of these contenders on this week's Sneak Previews. I'm Jeffrey Lyons.
And I'm Michael Medved, and we'll get to Safe Passage in just a moment. But first up is The Madness of King George, a stunning drama that tells the true story of the King of England who lost the American colonies and then lost his mind. Nigel Hawthorne is a definite Oscar contender right here, playing King George III. In this scene, Rupert Everett, playing the oldest of the monarch's 15 children, has heard that the old man is getting more and more eccentric. So the Prince of Wales here pays him a visit during a Handel concert at the palace.
And what brings you to Windsor, sire?
I had heard your majesty was indisposed, but I see it there.
Indisposed? Is there anywhere I can assist? Want to hump the old bird out of the nest, is that it?
Oh, sir, there may be responsibilities that I could share.
Want to get your fat hands on government, is that it? Well, I'm old and infirm. I'll not trouble you long.
I wish you the best of health, Father.
Wish me, wish me. You wish me death, you plump little cuckoo.
Hush, Father, hush.
Hush. You dare to stop the King of England from speaking his mind?
Later, the king's condition gets much worse. He babbles and rages day and night, here driving servants and family members out of the palace at the crack of dawn and commanding them to say their morning prayers.
Trespass against us. Deliver us from evil. Sir! No! Sir, we are in company.
Mind your own business.
Help the king! Help him! George! Sir, you must rest.
I'm the king. I cannot rest. I must rule. Half the day gone already. Still, there is government.
Government hasn't begun yet, sir. Government's still in bed. Government is lucky.
Eventually, Parliament takes control of the situation. The king is held a virtual prisoner, where he's treated by brutal doctors and kept apart from his loving queen, Helen Mirren.
What is there to say? We were married for 28 years. Never separated, even for a day. You abandoned me to my tormentors.
The doctor said it was for your own good.
My good? What do they know of my good?
George, they may not permit me to see you again. A bill has been prepared to make the son regent.
Regent?
Do you understand? He is to rule in your place.
Regent. A fat one.
No. His Majesty has not been told about the bill, madam.
No, he must know. George, you must know.
Come away, madam.
He must know. Do you you understand? The sun.
This is a truly great film. I mean, it thrusts you into that world, and you really understand the torment that the king was going through, because he's remembered only as the king who lost the colonies, and this happens afterward. And, you know, I was told that they were going to call this The Madness of King George III and put a Roman numeral after it, but they were afraid that audiences would think it was a sequel to a sequel, incredibly, so they call it The Madness of King George.
Well, of course, it's based upon a very successful British stage play called The Madness of George III, and it was written by Alan Bennett, who a lot of people may remember from the Beyond the Fringe group.
With Dudley Moore and Peter
The
Cook.
amazing thing about this movie is it's directed by a first-time motion picture director, a veteran theatrical director named Nicholas Heitner, but the film is gloriously cinematic. In fact, along with Legends of the Fall, it may be the most gorgeous film to look at that I've seen this season.
But unlike that film, you never get the sense at any point in the movie that this movie is so impressed with itself, despite all the grandeur, because this king, like him or hate him, is going through torment, mental anguish. Maybe he went crazy because he couldn't remember the names of his 15 children, for goodness sake, but you learn a lot about it.
But the fact is, you can forget about the sets and the costumes, and you just focus on the people. The relationships here feel like the people next door. It may be the royal family of England from 200 years ago. Nigel Hawthorne, not well known to film
could
audiences.
be the F. Murray Abraham of this year's Oscar cast.
He's a great theatrical performer from London, and what he does is he makes a performance that's heartbreaking, that's very funny. He goes through transformations, and the amazing thing is there's a cliffhanger ending, and it's all true.
It's all historically correct, too, down to the smallest detail. I mean, even when they recreate the House of Parliament, the debates and the way the people looked, and some of the intrigue behind it, and his son trying to get the throne, it's all correct.
And every part comes across with indelible artistry. There's an actor named Julian Wadham who plays the Prime Minister, William Pitt the Younger. He looks exactly like portraits of William Pitt. And another thing that I loved in the movie, one of the most effective uses of classical music ever in a film, they used the music of George Friedrich Handel, who actually was the court composer for King George's grandfather, George II.
I like the fact that they also used Helen Mirren playing his German-born wife, the Queen. She's a wonderful actress. Well, next up is a movie totally different. It's called Nobody's Fool, a slice-of-life contemporary drama set in a small, snowbound town in upstate New York. I told you it was different. Paul Newman plays an unemployed construction worker who, at age 60, starts to face the fact that he's lived a wasted life. He spends most of his time and most of the movie feuding with his former boss, Bruce Willis. But he has nothing against his boss's flirtatious wife, Melanie Griffith.
You, Sully?
Yeah.
Did you come to steal our new snowblower?
I've done it already, just about.
I could legally shoot you and get away with it.
Not unless I'm breaking and entering.
Are you gonna break and enter?
Yeah, what's happening with Dummy?
I don't know. He took my threat to shoot him a lot more seriously than you just did.
Well, the poor guy just had a bypass. Maybe he's trying to cram everything he can do into 6 months. When he realizes he's going to live until he's 70, he'll slow down.
If I had my way, he wouldn't live till Thanksgiving. Go ahead, steal our snowblower. You're the slowest damn thief I ever saw.
Now, Sully's renting a room in the broken-down house owned by his former 8th-grade teacher, played by the late Jessica Tandy.
Does this mean you're finally going to get around to fixing my porch railing?
I'll do it today, I promise.
Do you mind my asking what you are doing?
I'm keeping the guy that I stole this from stealing it back.
Donald, does it ever bother you that you haven't done more with the life God gave you?
Not often. Now and then.
Of course, the big news on this film is Paul Newman's performance, and he is wonderful. He's very comfortable in this role. It's the kind of part he's played before and played very well, never better than he does here. But despite that, I didn't see much to like in this movie. To me, Nobody's Fool, you'll pardon me, was nobody's thrill. It's directed by Robert Benton, who knows small-town life, as he showed in Places in the Heart. He knows how to get good performances from actors, as he showed in Kramer versus Kramer. But here, nothing happens. It feels like watching paint dry.
Well, they say the word bypass. I think this movie had a plot bypass. You keep waiting for these characters to get interesting. It is no surprise that Newman is kind of estranged from his family. You see his ex-wife for 10 seconds. That's a totally ignored character. And as you say, finally, in a little mill town in upstate New York, and this in the country has thousands of those, you keep waiting for something to make this extraordinary or moving, and it doesn't. And Newman is so good, he looks all the better because everything that's going on around him is so dull.
Well, everybody is good in the picture, but you know that you're in trouble trouble, despite all the good acting, when the dramatic highlight of the film is stealing a snowblower. And then they steal it several times back and forth. It's one of those things where you really do feel angered by the film because there's so much talent involved. The set decoration, they capture the feeling of the small town.
It's not angered, betrayed, because Jessica Tandy, this was her next to last film. She is wonderful. She's the only person in town who likes him. You wanted to see more interplay there. She likes him better than her own son in the movie, but nothing happens. There's going to be a big shopping mall or big amusement arcade or hotel that's going to be built, but you know what's going to happen with that end of the story, so nothing happens.
There's a fundamental problem here. It's based on an acclaimed novel by Richard Russo, which is very rich in atmosphere, and one of those books you can sort of dive into and enter the world. And here, they try so hard to capture this aura of sort of a claustrophobic, wasted life, but it ends up inevitably feeling like a claustrophobic, wasted film, which I guess neither of us can recommend. Well, moving on, next up is Safe Passage. And this time, it's Susan Sarandon who's the Oscar contender. She plays here the long-suffering mother of 7 boys, and as the movie begins, she's finally ready to call it quits after 25 years of marriage to eccentric inventor Sam Shepard.
You know, if you were to suddenly turn soft, I wouldn't hold it against you.
Patrick, don't. Look. Simon and I are moving.
Oh, that's smart. You got a completely paid-for house right here?
We want to be closer to my work.
Work? What work?
We interrupt this regularly scheduled program for a news bulletin.
I told you to turn that off.
Marines are reported dead, an unknown number injured in an explosion this morning at the American compound of the multinational peacekeeping force in the Sinai Desert. Details remain sketchy at this hour, but preliminary reports indicate the blast occurred in the early morning hours. It was of suspicious origin. The explosion leveling the 3-story headquarters building where an undisclosed number of Marines were sleeping.
Is that right?
Wait a minute, what building did they say it was, son?
Information as it becomes available. For now, we return you to your regularly scheduled program.
Sarandon doesn't know whether her son, the young Marine, is alive or dead. And while waiting for news, she talks with Marcia Gay Harden, the girlfriend of another one of her sons.
I started out, I wrote down, I'm the mother of 7 boys. Yeah, right. I just sat there. I couldn't think of anything to say for 45 minutes. I was sitting there, and I couldn't. I'm the mother of 7 sons. That's it. Oh, God.
And it wasn't enough.
Oh, I don't. I've always thought there'd be something more. You know, one minute, I'm hot for Patrick, and then the next minute, I'm the mother of 7 sons.
What was that something more that you wanted?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I was 35 before I had a dinner where I wasn't cutting somebody else's meat.
Okay? Maybe you're right. Maybe you shouldn't have had all those kids.
Oh, I can't imagine my life without any one of my guys.
That was the dramatic high point in the movie, which otherwise left me cold. It's about a lot of little incidents, and Susan Sarandon as the mother of 7, I thought she, I don't know, she didn't quite convince me that she was the mother of 7. And maybe I've seen her in Little Women 2 weeks ago as the mother of 4, so she's the mother of 11 now.
Perfect mother roles
but
right
like
now.
the movie Nobody's Fool, it's a lot of little, well, not even a lot of little incidents in the other film. Here, a lot of characters, lots of sons, too many for my money, not too many things happening. In the end, it didn't pay off enough.
Well, it is in some ways very similar to Nobody's Fool. It's sort of a snowbound, small town, and it had a plotectomy. There's no real plot here at all. The only question is whether this son who's in the Sinai supposedly is alive or dead. But I liked the picture, and I liked it because of the relationships. Unlike Nobody's Fool, you can really tell sort of the tension and the changes in relationships between people. The interaction between her and Sam Shepard is very well done. I think you can believe that this is a couple who's been together 25 years, who have the hots for each other, are very desperate and passionate for each other, but somehow can't quite get along. I liked all of that. It was very subtle.
It looked like a play. There were little quirky things happening, and also things are repeated. They look at old movies twice. They go to flashbacks twice. They avoid a vicious dog when they're delivering papers twice
Listen,
in the movie.
I think
It's a whole premise that's really
Congress
stretched
ought
thin.
to make a law that makes it a life imprisonment mandatory for any director who shows old home movies of people when they're in trouble.
Well, that's another reason not to like it. I thought this was everybody trying so hard, except Sam Shepard, who I thought was in another movie and kind of phoned in his part.
Oh, he was
that laid-back delivery,
yes,
I've seen it every time.
That's
it's the Chris Christopherson syndrome. Just less is a lot more.
He's supposed to be playing a character who's emotionally distant. This is directed by a first-time movie director, veteran stage director named Robert Alan Ackerman, who does, I think, a wonderful job with all the actors. And again, Susan Sarandon's being touted for an Oscar nomination. I don't think she'll get it because I don't think anybody's going to...
I think she'll get it for Little Women. I don't
for
think
Best Supporting Actress.
Yes, I don't think enough people are going to see this movie. This movie just left me cold.
All right, next up is A Man of No Importance. And if the title here sounds just a little bit familiar, it's because it's a reference to the Oscar Wilde play, A Woman of No Importance. Now, in this movie, Albert Finney plays a Dublin bus conductor who's obsessed with Oscar Wilde, and he recruits passengers to play parts in his amateur theatricals. When he meets Tara Fitzgerald, he thinks he's found his new star.
Miss Royce.
Adele.
Adele. Will you be in my play?
Your play?
We have a drama group, my friends and I.
On the bus?
In a theatre, St. Imelda's.
Sure, I can't act.
You're the perfect princess.
Some princess. What do you like, Mr. Byrne?
No, I mean, princess in the place. Hello, me. Coming.
Yeah, what are you doing, the old bollock, you?
Is that the one Dance for Herod? And got the head of John the Baptist on a plate?
Yeah, you know it.
From the Penny Catechism?
Yeah. Philistine! Say you'll do it, Miss Royce. Say you'll be my princess.
Was she a kind of belly dancer, Mr. Barr?
Yes!
What do you want, Billy?
Now, Finney lives upstairs from a butcher shop owned by Michael Gambon, who's another participant in his Oscar Wilde plays, and who proves that the meat on the counter isn't the only ham in the store.
Am I still playing the part of Algernon?
The thing is...
I'll accept no minor part, mind you.
No fear, Mr. Carney.
You're still the backbone, the guts, the very truths of my production. You're still my star. God bless you, Alfred. That's 2 and 6, Billy. Great.
Yeah. The refreshments.
Oh, no, don't worry. I will provide the ham for the rehearsal sandwiches. God bless you, Alfred. It is very vulgar to talk about one's business. Only stockbrokers do that, and then merely at dinner parties.
This is a wonderful movie. You know, Albert Finney is one of my favorite actors. He is so long overdue for the Oscar. It isn't funny. Everybody thinks he won it years ago for Tom Jones. He didn't. He has never been better. He also did the Browning version, which not enough people saw earlier this year. For that one, or particularly this one, I think he is an Oscar favorite, at least for a nomination. He's wonderful in this film.
Well, this is a much better film, and I think a much better performance in the Browning version, because it has a more human dimension. I think we ought to say that in addition to being very funny and earthy and sort of a slice of Irish life from the 1960s, the film has a sad undercurrent, because the character played by Albert Finney has a guilty secret, which is the same secret Oscar Wilde had for most of his life, what the Victorians used to call the love that dare not speak its name. He's secretly in love with his fellow worker on the bus driver, played by Rufus Sewell. And the irony is, this is the 1960s, it's Dublin. He doesn't know another living soul who feels what that time and place considered the unnatural passions that he feels, or who could even talk to about it.
Well, he's an honest man in an intolerant society. I mean, when he says to the guys who are honking the horn, you know, Philistines, I mean, that's a beautiful moment, but it also bespeaks the torment that's going on inside him. And, you know, too often, when an actor has to have the accent as part of his persona, as the character he's playing, they can use it as a crutch, and they can come in and out of the accent. He gets it from the first frame. He never loses it. Our ears get accustomed to it right away, and you forget that it's Albert Finney. You don't see the acting.
Well, all the actors are good. Even the most small, I think the smallest supporting roles. I mean, people like Brenda Fricker, who plays his sister, is excellent. Right. Rufus Sewell, who plays the guy that he's secretly in love with, is excellent. excellent. The fact is, this is well directed by a director with a grand old Irish name of Suri Krishmama, who's actually British of Indian ancestry, but he has a feel for this time and place that's very affectionately drawn. It's a moving film. It's at the end a rather disturbing film, but one that I think deserves the widest possible audience.
I liked one part of the movie where every morning he sees the same pastor, like in Groundhog Day almost. Every morning he sees the same pastor. Good morning, nice to see. And these are the people he has recruited. Almost
you feel
almost
like you're riding on the same bus, on the same route. I mean, I think to summarize it, we could both say that when it comes to this film, we're both wild, W-I-L-D-E, about Albert.
See, I knew you would do that pun. I let it go, but I'm glad you picked it up. Well, next up is Death in the Maiden, starring Sigourney Weaver as a woman who was tortured by the military regime in Chile. 15 years later now, she happens to cross paths with Ben Kingsley, who she thinks she recognizes as the doctor who supervised her torture. Now she's determined to put him on trial for his crimes, while her husband, Stuart Wilson, looks on.
Move away from him.
This is unforgivable.
Hold it. Everyone be quiet.
This is unforgivable.
Hold it. It's working. We already have a statement from the good doctor. He tells us that tying a person up and preventing him from speaking for 10 minutes is unforgivable. You know what, doctor? I agree. It is unforgivable. Please, proceed with your statement.
I don't know you. I've never seen you before in my life. I don't know what it is you think I've done. Obviously, she's insane. She's not responsible for what she does, but you're a lawyer. If you don't stop this right now, you're an accomplice. You're going to have to pay the price. Oh.
You threatening?
I'm not.
Yes, you were. Let me make this clear. The time for people like you making threats is over. Huh? Out there, maybe you are still running things behind the scenes, but in here, I'm in charge. Understand? Me. Is that clear?
I'm sorry. I didn't mean it as a threat. It's okay. He's not resisting. Hear him out.
Ben Kingsley is excellent in this picture, as he always is, and there's certainly an appropriate dark, forbidding mood to it. But in general, I don't think the movie works at all. It's the latest from director Roman Polanski, and it actually reminds me of one of Polanski's earliest films, a film he did in Poland called Knife in the Water.
Famous film of this,
yeah,
right.
and that was two men actually, and a woman trapped together on the same sailboat. This has the same feeling with two men and a woman trapped together on a lonely night where there's a storm going on. But in Knife in the Water, there was sort of a dramatic reason for them to be all alone in this boat. Here, them being alone in the house all feels very contrived, very hokey, very schematic and stagey, and ultimately it just feels like a staged play, which is what it is.
Well, I saw it on the stage, and they used 3 big stars, and I thought when they did it in the movie version with 2 big stars and Stuart Wilson, the third actor here, that would change the whole balance of the work, and it didn't at all. What it did do was change my perception on the guilt or innocence of the character Kingsley plays, and I think that's wonderful. I'm still not sure if he's guilty or innocent, and it worked on me. It was extremely powerful, and I think it was an intelligent decision by Roman Polanski to use 2 major stars in what is essentially a 2-character play, and the give and take between them is extremely powerful.
But part of the reason that the thing doesn't work is because Stuart Wilson is so overwhelmed by the other 2, and frankly, Sigourney Weaver, who's being touted for an Oscar
again, I think she'll get a nomination.
Oh,
here.
I don't. I think she's very ineffective. You know, one of the things that they did is, even though it's set in Latin America, they made a decision, and I'm not sure it works, to do nothing about sort of creating either Latin accents, Hispanic accents at all. Everybody speaks in this sort of flat American
speech.
And
they don't really name Chile,
Kingsley,
that's true. They don't name Chile itself. They filmed it in Spain and in Paris, and they don't really get specific, and I wish they had.
But it's a terribly brutal film in terms of its references, in terms of what happens.
Yes, it is.
And it doesn't really pay off. I don't think it really has a center to it, an emotional center,
whether
or a
he's
moral
guilty
center
or
at
innocent, or are we all guilty of tolerating these? You can go on and on about the moral center of this movie. I think the ambivalence is the core of its dramatic force.
I think you're guilty of tolerating a very ineffective movie here, but we had promised at the beginning of the show that we were going to take a little bit of of a look at the Oscar races. And here, I think you've got to concede that even though we didn't like Nobody's Fool, Paul Newman is a certain nominee. Up against Tom Hanks, who I think is the front runner for Forrest Gump. You've definitely got Nigel Hawthorne, who should be considered. And I do think Susan Sarandon is going to get a nomination, probably maybe for Safe Passage. I think that with Sigourney Weaver, it's a long shot for her. The front runner in that category has to be Jodie Foster.
And I think
Nell.
Tommy Lee Jones might get nominated for Cobb. It's going to be an interesting year. People concentrating more on the actors, I think, than the films themselves.
All right, now to summarize all our reviews on the big releases we covered on this show. Our best bet is The Madness of King George, which I'm picking as one of the year's very best films. All the performances are absolutely brilliant, and this amazing film makes you care deeply about its complex historical characters from 200 years ago. It's officially unrated, but there are some discreet sexual references and some violent, frightening treatment of the Mad King. On Nobody's Fool, we also agreed this movie is nobody's thrill, an earnest slice-of-life drama that's actually a slice of exquisite, pointless and plotless boredom, despite good performances. It's rated R, but only for the appropriately salty language of the characters. On Safe Passage, we split. Jeff found it endless and talky, wasting strong performances on too small a payoff. But I thought that the characters and their complex family relationships were so compelling that it made up for the lack of a real plot. There's a good deal of harsh language and some sexual scenes and references. We both liked A Man of No Importance, which is funny, touching, and very sad, with a masterful Oscar-worthy performance by Albert Finney. There's some harsh language, some very vague sexual references to the main character's guilty secret, and one scene of frightening violence. And finally, we split once again on Death and the Maiden. Jeff hailed the brilliant performances, especially by Ben Kingsley, and thought the movie does a good job of keeping you guessing on key plot points. But to me, this felt like a contrived, hokey melodrama, where fine acting couldn't hide the fact that it was just a film play. There's an abundance of harsh language, sexual content, and violence, just as you'd expect for this horrifying subject matter.
Join us next week for our annual Best of the Year show. And speaking of best in the year, I brought my daughter Hannah and my son Ben, who are here to wish you all a
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
It's terrific to see your beautiful family here, and it's great to see that they've inherited their incredible good looks entirely from Judy. And I'm Michael Medved, and until next week on Sneak Previews, don't forget to save us the aisle seats.